Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'd first like to wish everyone a very wonderful, very happy Hacktoberfest. I would also like to wish everyone a very special Hispanic Heritage Month and also Breast Cancer Awareness Month for the month of October that we'll be celebrating. So welcome everyone to IBM Code Engine 101, run your code containers and batch jobs. Just reshare. There we go. So before we get started, I have a couple pieces of housekeeping. If you want to take a look at the chat, if you are joining from Crowdcast today, you will see the following links I'm about to share on the right. If you're joining from YouTube or Facebook or one of our IBM developer socials, I'm going to share them in the slides for you so that you can have access to them as well. So if you'd like to have access to all of the slides and everything that we're going to present to you today, so you'd like to work through the workshop on your own at home, or maybe share with a friend or gain access back to it, you can do that at ibm.biz/IBM-code-engine-101-slides. I know it's very long. I need to archive some custom links. So if you're in the Crowdcast, you will see that at the top of the chat on your right. Yes, this session is being recorded. So if you would like to refer back to the workshop today, you can do so at crowdcast.io/IBM-code-engine/1. So this is part one of our two-part series, our IBM Code Engine 101 and 201. So we're going to be covering 101 today, and 201 will be tomorrow. So you can join at the same Crowdcast URL you joined with today, or join IBM Developer Social channel, wherever you were comfortable joining with today at the same time for the 201. If you would like to follow along, you will need an IBM Cloud account. You can sign up at ibm.biz/IBM-code-engine-101. To refer to the sample applications that we're going to be referencing throughout our series, and all of the other cool Code Engine resources we have for you, you can access all of those in the Code Engine repository at github.com/IBM/Code Engine. So feel free to put a big click the star in your in GitHub so you can come back to find all the cool Code Engine resources. Okay, so feel free to share in the chat where you're joining from today. I'm going to introduce myself as well as the other speakers and support that we have here today. We're going to share our name and pronouns, our title, company, or maybe what program you're with. We're going to be sharing where we're from and where we're joining from, so feel free to share in the chat. And if you're really in the sharing mood today, feel free to share something you love and a quirk, maybe something that's uniquely weird or different about you. So I will kick us off. I will go first. My name is Jenna Ritten. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a cloud developer advocate at IBM. I'm currently joining from and originally from Detroit, Michigan. Although my team is kind of all spread out now. We're all now one North America team. Something I love are my dogs. I have 3 little Yorkies running around. I think they've settled down now, so we won't hear any scratching. And a quirk. So if you've joined any of my workshops before, I can't think of a better quirk for myself. I have an obsession with tuna melts and tuna salad sandwiches. If it's on the menu, I order it, and I judge all of the food at a restaurant based on how much effort they put into their tuna sandwiches. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to send them to me on social at jwritten. And you can feel free to reach out to me and any of my social channels as well if you have any questions later on. So I would like to pass things over to one of our speakers today, Evan, so he can introduce himself for all of you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining from. Thanks for being with us. My name is Evan Blash, or Blache, if you're from the bougie side of my family. I work in the IBM CISO business unit. I am in Austin, and I'm originally from New Orleans, so shout out to anybody from the boot. My pronouns are he, him. And a quirk about me, I love to play sports. I'm not exactly athletic, but I love to play sports. And I talk a lot of trash. You would not know that I didn't actually play that well based on the amount of trash talking that I do. So that's enough about me and my trash talking. I will pass the mic over to my other advocate, Mr. Montrez.
Yeah. So my name is Montrez Whitsett. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a cloud software engineer at IBM. I'm originally from Mobile, Alabama, and now I live in Dallas. So yeah, Dallas is pretty cool. Something I love, I actually love shoes, right? I have over, I don't know, like 120 pair of shoes maybe. And then some quirk about myself, I'm 6 feet 6 inches tall, which is pretty short compared to Shaq. But that's something about me. But yeah, I can pass it back to Jenna now.
Thank you so much, Montrez. Yes, Montrez is a couple heads taller than I am, for reference. I think he's tall, so that counts. Doug, if you'd also like to introduce yourself, Doug's going to be hanging out in the chat, answering all of your questions. So any questions that you get as we go, please feel free to share them in the chat or in the Ask a Question.
Yeah, I'm just here to provide support. I'm the technical offering manager for Code Engine. So any questions you have, just put them in the chat and I'll do my best to answer them.
Thank you so much. Let's see here. Okay, good to go. So to start out, especially being that it is Hacktoberfest, my favorite time of year, if you are interested in leveling up your skills, getting a lot more familiar with cloud technologies, containers, all things cloud native, I have a list in the slides of cloud certifications that I recommend to all of you. They are completely free. So these are all IBM certifications and different areas of cloud technology. They are completely free. You'll get a badge and a certificate upon completion. You can share it on your LinkedIn. So feel free to make use of those and help you, move up in your skills in your career. So we're going to get started. So how many of you are familiar with containers? So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we before we deep dive and really get more acquainted, better acquainted with Code Engine. So to start, just very high level intro in any of these things, terms that you might not be familiar with, but a container is just a standard unit of software, packages up all the code and all of its dependencies. So an application can run from any computing environment. So it's available for Linux and Windows-based applications, Mac, and containerized software is going to always run the same regardless of the operating system, regardless of the infrastructure. So the nice thing about containers is that they isolate software from its environment to ensure that it's working the same despite any differences, for instance, between development and staging. So it's really nice if you're, working with a team of people on the same project. You don't have to make sure that everyone's running the same operating system or has everything installed. Containers make things really flexible and really easy. So what's a container image? So a container image is an unchangeable static file that includes the executable code so it can run an isolated process. So it's a lightweight standalone executable package of software that includes everything an application needs to run. The code, the runtime, the system tools, system libraries, settings. Now you might be saying, wait, you just said that was what a container is. So the main difference between containers and container images are that container images become containers at runtime. So for instance, in the case of Docker containers, those Docker containers, those Docker images will become containers when they run. So you'll see when we get to the workshop, when we run Docker images on Code Engine, what's happening is they're actually becoming containers at runtime. So what's a container registry? So you heard me just mention Docker Hub. So a container registry is just a repository similar to GitHub that has a collection of container images for running that you can run on things like Kubernetes, Code Engine, OpenShift, right? You're storing all of your container images there. So when you're working with container images, obviously you need somewhere to save them, similar to GitHub. So there's two types of container registries, public and private. And your registry essentially acts as your place to store your images and share them through a process of uploading, which is pushing, and downloading from, which is pulling. So in addition to container images, registries are also great for storing APIs or application programming interfaces, paths, and access control parameters. Go. So what is serverless? You might have heard some of the serverless buzz, which is basically what it is that we're going to be focusing in on with Code Engine today. So serverless is a cloud execution model that enables simpler, more cost-effective ways to build and operate cloud-native technologies. So serverless is a cloud computing execution model that provides resources on demand, and it offloads all the responsibility for common infrastructure tasks like scaling, scheduling, patching, provisioning to cloud providers and tools. So that it allows engineers to focus their time and effort on the business logic specific to their applications or process. So it lets developers be developers and just focus on writing code. So what is Code Engine? So Code Engine is IBM's fully managed serverless platform as a service that runs your containerized workloads. This includes web applications, microservices, event-driven functions, and even batch jobs. Code Engine can even build container images for you from your source code using its built-in source-to-image feature. So, for instance, you might be saying, well, I'm not really that familiar with container images, and I don't really know how to build one. The great thing about Code Engine is you don't have to be. You don't have to be familiar with containers. You don't have to be familiar with creating images. It can do all of that for you. All you need to give it, all you need to serve it is your source code. So what can Code Engine do? So Code Engine, as I mentioned, creates container images from source code. It can access source code in repositories, push images to registries like IBM's Container Registry, Docker Hub, Red Hat's Quay. It's integrated into IBM Cloud and all IBM Cloud services. It handles and hides all cluster provisioning, configuring, scaling, and managing servers. It auto scales workloads up and down, even to 0 when there's no active requests. It's built on open source Kubernetes, Knative, Istio, and Tekton, which keeps applications and jobs real flexible and portable. There we go. So Code Engine applications and batch jobs. So these are the things that we're going to focus on today, and we're going to work through in our workshop and show examples for you. So by default, select. Okay, so in the workshop today, we're going to be using pre-built container images to demonstrate creating Code Engine applications and batch jobs. So we're going to look at the different types of workloads. So to start, applications are just workloads that typically respond to incoming messages. So those messages could be API calls or web page requests, events, or any other HTTP request. Applications process those messages. Code Engine will then scale your application based on the amount of incoming traffic to meet the demand. Likewise, it will scale your application back down when there's a reduction in traffic, even down to 0, like we just mentioned. This means that you're only paying when your application is actually running, and you're not incurring any costs when it's scaled down to 0, when it's not receiving any requests. Now, batch jobs are slightly different from applications, but not too much. There's a little different in that they do not typically respond to incoming messages. So they're often referred to as run-to-completion tasks. Batch jobs are meant to be created, then they execute a particular operation, and then when they're done, they exit. So unlike applications, batch jobs will not automatically scale. The number of instances are specified when the job is executed. So aside from not receiving inbound traffic and the mechanism by which they scale, batch jobs are similar to applications in just about all other aspects. So Code Engine. I want to give you a little bit more information about Code Engine and why it might be the right choice for you. And then we're going to get started with our workshop. So if you haven't already signed up for an IBM Cloud account, please go ahead and click the button at the bottom of the screen or up in the chat and do that so that you're able to follow along with us. So at a high level, Code Engine is a merging of all the various as-a-service containerized platforms merged into one. So whether your workload or your container is going to be running a function or a service function, excuse me, whether it's there for a platform as a service type of application, referring to web pages, 12-factor applications, whether you're running a batch job that doesn't respond to HTTP requests, or you're responding to HTTP requests like eventing. It doesn't matter. As long as you containerize your workload, Code Engine can run it for you. So Code Engine is going to run it in the cloud and manage all the infrastructure behind the scenes for you. So it's not just a matter of managing the infrastructure. Code Engine also presents a simplified developer experience for you that we'll show you once we get work through our workshop today. Even though Code Engine is running Kubernetes, Knative, Istio, and other open source technologies under the hood, you don't need to know that they're actually there. You don't have to learn kube control or Kubernetes or learn how to talk to Kubernetes and all the other container stuff. Code Engine has simplified everything to the point where you only need to focus on giving the inputs into what you want to deploy. So this means give Code Engine your source code if that's where you want to start your workflow, or your container image if that's where you want to start. It's completely up to you. And then you can just indicate the runtime semantics that you want for those workloads. Meaning, do you want to scale based on the load coming in or a certain amount of memory? Just give Code Engine the raw numbers or runtime semantics you want, and Code Engine will figure out how to make the infrastructure match your desired needs. So you as a developer can just say, go run this for me, and you can get back to coding, which is where you want to be spending most of your time as a developer. So you don't need to spend your time learning Kubernetes and how to manage Kubernetes or anything else related to infrastructure. So a few things to point out in our slide here. So Kubernetes clusters are running behind the scene, and Code Engine will scale those out for you so that you're only paying when your applications are actually running. If everything scales down to 0, which we'll see here shortly, you're not charged at all. Code Engine also supports scaling out based on resource usage. So instead of the number of requests coming in, Code Engine will scale out up or down your applications and workloads based on CPU and memory usage. Code Engine has built-in security to your applications, as you'll notice automatically. So you don't have to worry about setting up the SSL certificates, managing load balancers, runtime isolation between various workloads running in your cluster. Code Engine will do all of that for you. And as I mentioned before a few times, it'll also build images for you if you want to start with source code. Another really great point is that you can integrate any other IBM Cloud services you might be using. Not only can you talk to them, you can tell Code Engine which ones you want to talk to, and Code Engine will inject the credentials and coordinates of your instances into your application for you. So your application doesn't have to figure out where your credentials are, what secrets they're stored in. They'll be available to you as environment variables automatically. And finally, unlike other platforms where there's going to be limits in terms of how long your things can run for, how much memory they can use, Code Engine doesn't have those limits. So if you want to run something for 12 hours, go ahead. We're not going to stop you. You want to run high memory applications, go right ahead. Unlike other platforms, you don't have artificial limits imposed on you. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So we're going to set up our dev environment, and pretty much all we need to do is sign up for an IBM Cloud account. So if you haven't already, go ahead and sign up for an IBM Cloud account. The link will take you to a web page that looks like this. And you'll need to create an IBM Cloud pay-as-you-go account. But don't worry, Code Engine has an always free tier. You'll get 100,000 vCPU seconds per month, 200,000 gigabytes in memory per month, and you'll be able to accept up to 100,000 HTTP requests per month. You'll also be able to look at the amount of resources that we use for today's workshop, and it's going to be a fraction of a percentage of what's allotted in the free tier. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to pass things over to Evan, so he can take you through the beginning, part 1 of our workshop.
Thanks, Jenna. That was pretty awesome as usual. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Let's get going. All right. You guys can see my screen, right?
Yep.
All right, good stuff. So we heard a lot of different things about Code Engine, about containers and workloads and images and things to that nature. But let's actually dig in and actually build something, right? I like to see it, smell it, taste it, all that good stuff, right? And so if you have logged in and you are at your dashboard, to get to Code Engine, what you're going to do is you're going to go up to this magnifying glass next to the word catalog. And we're going to search for Code Engine. All right, we're going to select the Code Engine service. And we'll be able to jump right in here in just a second. And so as Jenna mentioned, Code Engine lets you start your workflow from either a container image or source code, right? It's completely up to you. If you want to start your source code, Code Engine will create a container image for you from a repository, and you can also use your source code, which at the end of the day is going to create a container for you. That's Code Engine's built-in source to image feature. So if you're familiar with Kubernetes or OpenShift, that's part of that. But we're going to start working on our workflow. And what you're going to see is not much points and clicks and not a whole lot of information. You're going to hear me do a lot of talking. And so what I want you to do is really kind of look at my screen, but pay attention, because there's some steps involved, but there's not a whole lot of information that I'm going to be inputting. And so you'll be able to grasp how easy Code Engine is to use, and you'll notice how easy it is to deploy an application or a batch job in Code Engine. All right, so I'm going to first start with a container image. Again, you can pick source code if you'd like, but I'm going to pick a container image, and my image name is going to be IBM com/HMO. And I'm going to hit start creating. This particular image is going to come from Docker Hub, but if you had an image that was in your own container registry, such as Quay or something other than Docker Hub, you could specify it here as well. So I'm going to hit the blue button, start creating. All right, awesome. And so again, going back to some of the conversation that Jenna mentioned earlier about Code Engine, you have a couple of options, right? You have a choice between an application and a job. And what's the difference, right? The difference is that apps and jobs are similar in the sense that they're both containers running code, but the biggest difference is that apps are event-driven, meaning that they respond to incoming HTTP requests, and they do work based on those requests. And whether it's sending back a web page or a REST API, if it responds to an HTTP request, then it's an app. And so Jenna talked a little bit about that, in that App Engine will allow you to scale up your app or down based on how much traffic you're receiving in your app. Jobs, on the other hand, they do not have HTTP requests or servers coming into them because they don't respond to those, right? They don't have servers running on them, and so they don't respond to those requests. They're more like run to completion workloads. They start when they're told, they do some stuff like execute code, and then they stop when they're done. And if you need to scale a job, then Code Engine will allow you to select how many instances that you want to run. And we'll talk a little bit more about those jobs and how Code Engine responds and whatnot, but let's continue with our app. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to scroll down to the name field, and I'm going to name my application HMO. And if you scroll further down, there's a section for projects, okay? If you want to actually create an application, you need to have a project. So I have one already created, but depending on your area, you can select what's best for you, depending on also your workloads, and set your name, etc., and the default resource group. So again, I have an application with a project. I have a project already ready to go. So I'm going to skip that part, but please feel free to create your project. All right. So I am going to show you that I'm not clicking on anything else, right? I have everything that I need right now to get going. I'm going to leave the default settings and click the create button. So while we're waiting for our application to deploy, which it's doing right now, by the way, let's talk about some of the things that didn't happen, that we didn't need to do, right? We hit the create button, and look, it says my application, my revision is ready. We didn't have to jack with any kubectl commands. We didn't have to create deployments or replica sets, pods, or any of that stuff, right? We gave Code Engine 2 pieces of information. We named the name of the application, HMO, and we also gave it the location of our container image. We didn't do any networking. We didn't set up an external endpoint. There was no load balancer or node port to set up. Again, we entered 2 bits of information, and booyah, we have an app. But an app is only an app if you can't actually see it. So let's test that app, and so you can actually see it. So I'm going to click the test application button in the upper right, and I'm going to select the application URL. All right, we're just waiting. There we go. All right, so apologies for the number of customers. That's some old data. Let's see if I can refresh that. Nope. Anyway, this is our app. Welcome to My Insurance. This is our HMO app. So
if you hit the reset button, the link at the bottom of the screen, where it says reset, hit that.
There we go.
That should reset it for you. Give it a sec. There, slowly erasing them. There you go.
Oh yeah, there we go. Thanks for that. I wondered how to do that. Good stuff. All right, so thanks again, Doug. So this is our app, right? Again, we only provided Code Engine with a couple of bits of information, and we have an application. Something else I want to point out to you is that if you take a closer look, this is an HTTPS application. So I didn't have to set up any SSL endpoints like you have to do in Kubernetes. I didn't have to create any certs or anything crazy. I gave it a couple of bits of information. I entered some data, and booyah, I have a secure application that's ready to go. And so if you're a developer, from a developer's perspective, I mean, you wrote your code, you committed it to GitHub, you're like, hey, let's do this thing. And we just did the thing, right? It's an internet-facing app, secure and ready to scale, all right? So let's check out some of these scaling features that we keep hearing about, right? So we're going to take this URL and copy it and paste it into the load generator service tool. All right, so the load generator service tool, the URL that you're seeing on my screen, this is not part of Code Engine. This is just a tool that we're using for the purposes of this workshop to simulate some load. Okay, so I'm going to paste this URL here in this generate load field. And the tool is, in essence, going to generate a continual load of 1,200 clients for about 30 seconds. And each time it hits the app, it'll cause the creation of a new customer. So there's more to that meets the eye, but the focus here is that we're going to generate some load, and you'll be able to see that load here. So let me click that button and generate some load, and let me go back to my application. Look at that, proudly serving customers. if you think about this load is going to increase, these numbers are going to increase. And think about, back in the day when you're driving by McDonald's and it said, millions and millions served, right? So maybe you don't go to McDonald's, so my apologies. All right. So what we're going to do here in just a second is we're going to pause the screen. There's a pause button here that we're going to select. And this is only for the purposes of the demo for you to actually see what's going on behind the scenes with Code Engine and some other things, so that I'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. So I'm going to hit this pause button, and then I'm going to go back over to my console, and I'm going to close that out. I'm going to select the Overview tab, and what you are looking at right now is the number of instances that have scaled up to take on and receive the simulated load that we just generated. Cool stuff, right? So we're up to 10 instances running now. Okay. Now, if you notice, as I mentioned, 10 instances, the load was supposed to generate about 1,200 clients, and you would think that it would be 1,200 instances. Well, let's take a closer look. I'm going to click on the Configuration tab and then also the Runtime tab and scroll down a little bit. And so we've set the threshold for the number of instances to be at 10. And if you look a little bit further down, it says that we can handle the maximum concurrency request per instance is 100. So if that number was, if we set the maximum number of instances to something like 20 or 15, then it would probably scale to 12. But because we have that threshold set at 10, it's reached the max number at this stage. And so when you think about what that means, that's another advantage to controlling costs. If you had an application that was receiving requests and the number of instances was set at a higher threshold and it started to scale out of control or something, which it's not going to do that on our environment, but at the same time, you want to control that cost. And so by doing that, this is another method of ensuring that you have the ability to scale, but at the same time, you are not scaling to a point where it's going to be super uber expensive. And also, I want you to take note of the minimum number of instances. That value is set to 0, okay? That's important because I'm going to show you why here in just a second. All right, so I'm going to uncheck. I went to my other screen, the application. Actually, before I do that, let me go back and let's look at the overview and see where our instances are. Cool stuff, right? So when I hit the pause button, and I'll come back to the minimum number of instances as well. And this is all related. When I hit the pause button, what that did is that stopped the page from refreshing. When the page refreshes, it's simulating load, and that is also giving us an instance that is responding, okay? And so it's scaled down to 1 instance. In a second here, it's going to scale down to 0. We just got to wait a few seconds. It's like letting the conditioner do its work, right? So give it just a few more seconds. Hopefully this works out well for us. Anticipation. I'm sorry, I don't sing very well. All right. One more second. Let's give it one more second. And then we're going to go back to the application. I believe that it's going to allow us to do that, and you'll be able to see what I'm referring to. All right, I'm going to go out on faith and unpause. All right. So the expectation here is that our application is going to scale down to 0 instances. And because we've selected the unpause button, in essence, the application is going to refresh, which means that, or the page is going to refresh and reload, which means that it's going to receive more traffic. Maybe I should have waited. Apologies, everyone. If we had waited a little bit longer, it would have scaled down to 0. When I clicked the unpause button, we would have seen it scale back up to 1. And you would have been able to see here in the little graph here that the revisions in the HMO app version 00001 was actually active. But let's keep moving, and you'll be able to see some more scaling capabilities here. So let's say your company, My Insurance, got bought out, right? So we got this cool splash screen, welcome to My Insurance, a blue background. That company got bought out, and you are on the development team, and they've told you that, hey, we want to rebrand the company application and website, and we want to make sure that we make that brand our own. So let's update our code. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to the configuration tab. We're going to go to our code tab, and we're going to select a new image. And that's going to create a new revision for us. So I'll go ahead and click this edit blue button, revision option here. And in the container image reference field, I'm going to select version 2. And so again, this is a container image that already exists out in Docker Hub. We're going to deploy version 2 of that. So our company's just been bought out. We're going to leave all the other defaults the same. So no changes that we're going to make there. All right. We're going to save our image, and it's going to redeploy. Now I'm going to go back to my image, my application, my welcome to My Insurance page, and I'm going to refresh my screen. And what you're going to see here is some cool stuff. Oh, look at that. Insurance for you. I got the green logo happening. That's what's up, right? My Insurance. Instead, it's insurance for you. No downtime, no changes that were to the naked eye, that is. You guys, if you were looking at this application, refreshing your page, if you blinked, you would not have missed it. We update it without any downtime. All right, so let's take another look of this rolling upgrade in the console. So some cool stuff happening here. So if we go back to the overview tab, aha, look at that. Interesting, right? We have another instance spinning up. Now, if you scroll down just a little bit, and even if you hover over these instances in the bar graph, you'll notice that there's 2 revisions, revision 1, revision 2. And also notice that in the legend, the colors of the revision. So the first revision, 0001, is still active, but revision 2 is really the active image that's running. In essence, what has happened here is without any downtime, we've done a rolling update, and the new image, the new revision, I should say, is now active, and we got the green background, and we're cooking with grease. And so the other image eventually will terminate, and you'll be able to take note of that here in just a little bit. All right, so let's scroll down a little bit, and I'll show you some other cool stuff as it relates to the revisions. Okay, so we have revision 1, again, which is the first revision, and we also have the other revision that is currently running. In the future, today, this is only a read-only mode, but in the future, you'll be able to use this to perform some traffic splitting, which will control how much traffic is incoming and goes to a specific revision. So let me say that again. So in the future, today it's read-only, we'll be able to control how much incoming traffic goes to which revision that you want. And so that's kind of cool if you're a company that does like A/B testing and you want to roll something out gradually, or you want to do some testing or something to that. So exactly, great for A/B testing. Good stuff, right? So thank you for that. All right, so we talked a lot about infrastructure and features. And remember, we only gave it the application name and the location where the image was from. I did a whole lot of talking, but I hope I took you guys on a journey of building an application from an image. But we're not done yet, right? Here's what we're going to do next. We're going to build some more stuff. And give me 1 second. I need to shift gears. Apologies, everyone. Almost there. Sorry. All right. Oops. There it is. There it is. All right. So we've just walked through building an app. We've deployed a second revision of the app. We've talked about some of the features and whatnot. And so this next part, after we've also generated some code, this next part of what we're going to do is I need to get to, let's see, apologies, I'm still getting there, sorry. All right, we're going to create a batch job, okay? So let's go back to the project name. I'm going to go to demo, which is my project name. I'm going to go to
Evan. I think we're gonna pass things over to Montrez.
My bad.
That's okay. That's okay.
I was getting a little ahead of myself. So, okay. Well, one thing I wanted to note before I pass it off is that we did a lot of different stuff. I gave it 2 bits of information. We got the image. We're going to pass this over to Montrez. Montrez will talk a little bit about the differences and also some of the event messages and producers that are coming as well in the future. So I'll stop talking and pass the mic.
Nice, thank you, Evan. I see you was getting excited. I was also. Could you see my screen?
Yep, good to go.
Nice. Let's see. All right, so that demo was pretty great, Evan. Okay, yeah. So yeah, the demo was pretty good, Evan. But what if the task you want to perform isn't really a web-like app? What if it's more like a traditional task where it's just a standalone executable that would do something like process a batch of data and then exit? It's not really sitting there waiting for some incoming event to initiate its execution. For example, say we're a hospital and we have hundreds, thousands, or even millions of patients' records that we need to process each night. How we deal with that kind of task? Batch jobs for those type of scenarios. And let's go through the process of creating a batch job. So we will, just like before, we will type in Code Engine here. So here, same as before here also, that we went through with the app page, we will type in our image name, which is IBM Cloud. And we'll hit the start creating button. So if you notice, it's the exact same as the application page, but with quite a few differences. And the main difference being the ability to scale. So with jobs, since we wouldn't have to scale based on data, we wouldn't need that capability. But we still have the same scenario as far as the name and the project information. So here we would give it a name. In this case, the name would be, I'm going to name it task. And project, we would essentially create a project just like before. But since we've created that project with Evan, I'm going to cancel and select the demo project we created with Evan. And we go through and leave everything else as default. And then hit the create button. So again, we're going to leave all of this as default, just like before. And we will hit the submit button right here. And so if you notice on this page, you notice a couple of different options. And the first option being that we have the ability to change the number of instances. So here, we'll change this number of instances to 10. And so it'll create 10 instances of our task. And the next option is array indices. Each instance of our job will get a unique value passed in as an environment variable. That way, each one can know its position in the list of instances and can use that to know each portion of this entire piece of work it's supposed to work on, right? This value could be something like 1 through 10, or it can be 1, 3, 5, or a mixture. The point is that you can choose that value if you only want to run certain ones. And the rest of the values here, we'll leave it as default. And before we do this, let's go over to our app page. And on this page, you'll notice we're serving 12,804 customers, and the number of records processed is 0. So we'll go back to our Code Engine page, and we'll actually submit this job. So job is submitting. Let's go here, and you'll notice that the number of records being processed is going up quite fast. And so let's go back to this page. And at one point we had 10 instances running, and it'll be a total of 10 together. But basically, we have 10 instances of our job task container running in parallel, and each is processing 10% of the records. Each task will run until it's completed, and the job tasks are processing all of the customer's records, and the results are being stored back in our persistent storage. So again, so we go here, and we'll notice that all the records are processed with a few clicks of a button, and basically, so let's start over. Let's think about all the information we gave, right? We gave a name, and then we basically we pointed to our image reference, just like in the application in a sense. And I mean, that's done. That was all we needed to start a batch job. But I mean, that's pretty cool. So if we go, but that isn't, I guess by clicking the blue button isn't the only way you can create batch job. So if we go to the job tab, you'll notice that we have the event subscription button. And so you can create batch jobs 2 ways, through the UI and the CLI. From the Code Engine console UI, you can create a cron job. Right now, cron jobs are only event producers available through the UI. But that will change in the near future. And so we can go create, and then we can set some fields here. Another way is through the CLI. From the CLI, you can create eventing with cron jobs, cloud object storage, and Kafka. Right now, they're only available through the CLI, but they will be available through UI in the future, supporting for Kafka and relative new. So it's pretty new for Kafka, but it's a little bit of a hidden feature So it's in alpha right now. If you're interested in Kafka, feel free to reach out to us and we'll help you get started. We'll let you know, when it's GA. But that's pretty much, I guess, it as it goes for batch jobs. And let's review what happened. So we created an internet-facing app with just providing the image location. With just that, we got quite a few built-in features. We got internal endpoints, HTTP and HTTPS, load balancer, auto scale app based on load, and scale to 0. We got roll and upgrade without 0 downtime as we deploy new versions. Then we created a job, a non-HTTP based piece of code, many of the same runtime configuration available as in the app does. Obviously, the endpoint-based ones don't apply, like load balancer and external endpoint. So we invoke the job by telling it how many instances to run. As a reminder, notice that for the most part, all we ever configure is the image name. And then for the batch, the number of instances. That's it. Obviously, there are other options available, but with Spark defaults, as we've shown, you should be able to get the bulk of your workload deployed and then do minor tweaks for the others. So that's pretty much it for the demo on the batch job. And I'll pass it back to Jenna.
Thank you, Montrez. Thank you, Evan. Great job. Thank you to both of you. So we're going to dive into the working with the CLI a lot more tomorrow. But just to show you an example of what we're going to be working with tomorrow and how quick and seamlessly you can get up to working with the Code Engine CLI, you can do everything we just did, this entire workshop, in the Code Engine console UI from the command line in just 5 commands. So you can create a new project, you can create a new application from a container image, run the load generator, create a new batch job, and run the batch job in just 5 commands from terminal. And this is what it looks like. This is everything we just did in the entire workshop run to completion in terminal in just 5 commands. So I'd like to say congratulations to all of you for following along. You've all made it to the end here. If you haven't already, I highly recommend take some time to work through it. You'll be surprised at how quick it is. You can probably actually run through this entire workshop in probably about 5 minutes. If you would be so kind, I'm going to share with you in the chat very, very quick 2-question feedback survey. I would highly recommend you fill it in. Always working on some new sample applications and tutorials. So if there's anything you would like to see, go ahead and share that in the feedback survey. Any applications, tech stacks you want to see, types of applications, maybe some cool e-commerce, any types of functionality you'd like to see. And then also, I've also shared in the chat the second part, Code Engine 201, deploying apps from source code, where we're going to really get heavy working with the Code Engine CLI, will be tomorrow, same time, same place, on Crowdcast. So you can actually join with the same URL you joined with today. And at the top of the screen, you can select session 2 of 2. If you're joining from any of the IBM Developer social channels, you can join the same place you joined today, same time tomorrow, which was 4 p.m. Central, and we will work through part 2. As always, I have all of the event resources and everything for you in the slides as well, including resources for the cloud certifications. And feel free to connect with us on any of our IBM Developer social channels. So I'm gonna put, here we go. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us wherever you're comfortable. I'm going to share LinkedIn with all of you. So if you have any questions, or maybe you want to give Kafka a try and you need help getting started, you can contact us on LinkedIn. Here we go. Here we go. Post it in the chat for you. Here you go. So feel free to reach out with any questions. Like I said, connect with us. And we will see you all back here tomorrow, same time, same place. There we go. For Code Engine 201, deploy apps from source code. So thank you all so much for coming. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out or post in the chat. We can answer those for you. And I hope you all are having a wonderful Hacktoberfest. And I'll continue to see all of you as we work through some cool projects this month. So have a great night, and thank you all so much for coming.